But today, it's with the magic of technology and thorough research, as well as avid support from Tom's tech support, we actually started at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
On the dot.
I am impressed that given the amount of tech support kind of like discussions we've had, like about RAM in computers, whether the Wi-Fi card's cooked, persistent stream keys, all that sort of stuff, George, that you had the confidence to give us a hard, like, it will go live deadline.
Didn't tell us, by the way,
argue,
until 10 minutes beforehand.
Yeah, I would argue that we were not ready for that. But you were like, no, you know what? Maybe I just need to sink or swim. We are going live at 4 o'clock, and maybe just that level of anxiety in myself and that harsh countdown from the computer will make it work. And to be honest, it did.
Oh, it kind of did. It kind of worked exactly like that.
Your camera looks great.
Thank you.
I assume we're streaming well. Hopefully you don't drop out in the middle of an impassioned speech again, but I guess we'll check in an hour.
That was rough. That was very upsetting when that happened last week.
It has been a great way to shut George up. Like, if he's just going on, it's just him cutting off. You know, it's actually better for the brevity of the podcast.
It did balance the scales, given George has all the tech on his end. He has all the power as to whether or not to mute or include anything we say. So for the powers that be to kind of exercise that same influence on him, like, yeah, someone up there likes us, Adam, just occasionally.
I know. The tech gods have smiled upon us.
The tech gods don't often smile upon us, but yeah, today we earned their grace, their favor by managing a live stream like literally every other performer in the COVID age is doing. So. Yeah.
Now, speaking of the impassioned speech that you were rudely interrupted from last week due to technical issues, it was about masks and the wearing masks in the pandemic and people's a lot of people sort of unwillingness to even, like, maybe accidentally kind of possibly without much effort do something that's good for someone else because people are swell.
You don't want to do something nice for someone else by accident. What if you accidentally make the world a better place? You know?
Yeah. What if by expending little effort and maybe even keeping my face just that little bit warmer in these cold winter days, I do something good for someone else? That's a complete rort, if you ask me.
It's the shopping trolley equation. You guys have heard of the shopping trolley equation, I'm assuming?
The shopping trolley problem from very famously from sort of Ethics 101, where it's like you've got one person on this side of the trolley and 5 people on this side of the trolley. What lever would you pull? Like, who would you choose to die in that situation?
That's not the trolley problem.
I've never heard that described as the shopping trolley problem.
No, this is a different one. This is the shopping trolley.
The shopping trolley problem is very similar to the trolley problem in ethics, where it's instead of having to pull a lever and choose which person lives or dies, all you have to do is put a 70-cent mask in front of your dumb fucking face. That's it. That's the whole trolley problem.
No, the trolley problem, shopping trolley equation or problem, or whatever you want to call it, the anecdote, is that, you know, if you are willing to return a shopping trolley so you take the shopping trolley, you put all your stuff in it, you go back to your car, you chuck all your stuff back in the car, and then you've got an empty shopping trolley. So what do? You leave the shopping trolley there, or do you take it back? You set it on fire.
No, I set myself on fire because I can't make decisions.
The river is obviously the correct answer. No, what do? You
take it back and get your dollar back.
Take it back.
That's the only way to do it.
But the theory is, in a world where you don't get something back, because the shopping trolley is never used to get back, right? Like, you never used to have to put dollars in them. You just take the trolley and put it back. So the concept being
of shopping,
you do something for the good of society by putting the shopping trolley back, even though you don't get anything back. Of course, with modern shopping trolleys, you do have to put, in fact, $1 inside the trolley to get it back, because that dollar might save your life one day. Or alternatively, you could just take the trolley and throw it in a river. That's the other option.
Drives me nuts, because who has $1 on them anymore? It's
I don't.
all cards.
I
barely have coins in my wallet anymore.
I literally have a shopping trolley dollar that I keep in the car specifically for the purposes of retrieving a trolley.
You would. Of all the people I know,
that supposed to be?
Would.
But the point of that
always
story,
be prepared.
That analogy of the shopping trolley equation, anecdote, whatever, is
kind of applies to the masks. Yeah,
that kind of applies to the masks. It's something you should do for the good of society, even though there is no inherent benefit necessarily to yourself. Although there is in some way. It's like another analogy I heard about it was, imagine if someone pees on you and you're both naked. So
hang on, Adam, you got to give me a moment to picture that.
Okay.
How did this conversation start?
No. This is a
conjure that image out of nowhere.
How... Okay, Tom, let me know when you're ready. Just let me know when you're good.
Okay, I'm there. Yep.
Okay, good. So two people, you're naked, both naked. Someone pees on you. If they pee on you, you become instantly wet, right? Now, hypothetically speaking, if you were wearing pants and someone pees on you, you get a little bit wet, but your trousers sort of block most of it, right? So you've got some protection against the pee. Now, hypothetically speaking, if you're both wearing trousers and someone attempts to pee on you, you don't actually get wet because the person who is wearing the trousers
has
opposite you, who is doing the peeing, pisses themselves, and you don't get wet, which is kind of how masks work. Which I think is a lovely analogy. I think it's the one we all
make it Premier of Victoria, Adam Doreen.
Yeah, the message and the the message and the logic and all that sort of stuff. I see it. I don't know how who the first person was to decide to use. Okay, so you're both naked. Someone pees on you. Who started that conversation?
Look, it's definitely been tested at research at Monash University.
Oh, definitely.
Over several kegs of beer.
Well, from every person I know who works in the sciences always talks about how, there's certain times a year where they all have to basically scrum for funding to just even justify still having jobs, right? So if someone's like, okay, we have to get naked and pee on each other to prove that PPE works. It's called PPE. PPE works, right? Yeah. So we'll need $40,000 to do that. Cool. And they'll be like, is there a scientific basis? Yes. So they have to do something to justify keeping a job. Anyway. The reason we brought this up because of George's impassioned speech about masks and people's unwillingness to do so, our Premier here in Victoria has said, tough titties, you have to wear them anyway as of this upcoming Wednesday. So yes, masks are mandatory. Dictator Dan has decreed that we all must wear masks.
Dictator Dan, freedom. What if I need to breathe, Tom? What am I going to do? I've got to breathe.
You're going to continue breathing.
Just through
I can breathe with a mask on? What are you talking about?
It's not like they're asking you to walk around while simultaneously suffocating yourself with a pillow. It's just fabric in front of your face.
It's I'd find it hilarious that the people today that are so adverse to the idea of wearing masks were also probably the same conservatives in the 1970s who argued on behalf of conscription. It's like
that's a long bow to draw.
I don't know.
Correlation.
It just seems to me like the same people that are like political conservatives that are saying my rights cannot be infringed. My freedoms to walk around breathing on people like Smaug the dragon as I choose shall not be infringed by anything ever. We're also the same people 40 years ago that were like, yeah, you should be sent off to war and die without a choice. That's freedom. Deal with it.
Or were they the...
Well, they voted for the same party. Let's put it that way.
The hippies that were like, nah, man, fucking object to the war and freedom for everyone, and then transmission... not transmission. Transition. Thank you very much.
Smash cut.
Jump forward, transition to 40 years later, and they've gone from being a flag-waving hippie to a neo-conservative libtard.
That sounds more like the transition. That's probably accurate. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
because they have money all of a sudden.
The point is that the cost of wearing a mask is totally negligible. But like, there's plenty of other things that our country has asked of its citizens, which are like way more invasive of interventions. But this is like, hey, we might be able to get back to some semblance of normality if people just wear masks. And for some reason, the individualistic, psychotic, libertarian right has just shat itself. To use your trouser analogy, they've completely pissed all over themselves everywhere in response to this. But it feels to me like a pretty modest request. Not to mention the fact that, you know, there's a bunch of misinformation being posted by people I know in my life who citing quote unquote studies about how mask wearing actually like makes you have the disease worse and all this sort of horse shit. It's like we've
they say it like that.
What? Well, just
wear mask make disease worse.
Would you believe we looked at this study as a randomized controlled test and the p-value of just like throwing science sounding words, but if you like actually look at the test, which I did. Like, by the way, it's a randomized controlled trial, not a randomized controlled test. So, like, incorrect on just, like, basic science verbiage, but that's fine. It says the test that the guy cited in this video, this Truth in Media video, you know if it's called Truth in Media, by the way, like, probably horseshit. But the scientific study that he quoted was, like, N95 masks versus surgical masks, not N95 masks versus nothing. And so, like, the whole video is just, like, completely fucking misleading. I've just done a whole video about it. But, like, people I know are, like, deliberately spreading this information, deliberately spreading misinformation against what is essentially, like, the most basic common sense measure to potentially slow the spread of a influenza-like virus, which is to cover your fucking face, you gross piece of shit.
Yeah, especially when a lot of people misconstrue it to be like, because you see the study, or like not so much studies, but the advice at least coming out that's like wearing a mask doesn't make you immune to catching the virus.
Sure.
So it's not like they're saying wear a mask and then you fuck social distancing, fuck whatever, have a rager, whatever. Like, no, like, and that's true. It doesn't do that. But what it does do is reduce your likelihood of passing anything to someone else.
Yeah,
so
which in the case of
wearing it, then it kind of does lower your risk of catching the virus, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's one of those things that's like
benefit someone else,
right? You'll notice at the very start of the pandemic, you know, people were like freaking out and putting masks on because they thought it would save themselves. Like, people were doing it of their own accord. And they'd say that there's some preliminary evidence that might suggest that there is some benefit in terms of, you know, potentially preventing you from catching.
Trouser analogy.
It's probably better than not wearing it.
Sure.
Like, it might not be a gotcha, you can't catch me coronavirus, but it's probably better than not wearing it if someone happens to piss in your face, or however the analogy goes,
so to speak. But like the idea of like, oh wait, this might benefit someone else and not me. Just like, fucking get it off me. It's an impingement on my freedoms. Like, that I find is just ridiculous.
I saw a post this morning from one of my friends that was like, well, what if I just want to go walk the dog at 4 a.m. when no one's around? Do I have to wear a mask then? I was like, well, yeah, okay, but like, the analogy I think we used weeks and weeks and weeks ago was, you know, our grandparents were asked to go to war and murder people.
Right.
You're getting asked to wear a mask and sit at home. I think we'll be okay.
We're not asking you to ship out, on D-Day and cop a bullet in the face to fight the impending threat of Nazism. We're asking you to please put a thing around your face.
Yeah,
like,
it's where whenever I see like the phrase being thrown around of like how this is our generation's world war or wartime, and I'm like, I get it in the economic crisis, like, you know, making sacrifices and all that sort of stuff, but I really feel it's not the same. Like, this is a big deal, but, you know, it's not like our entire generation of men are going off to die.
Yeah, they didn't have Netflix and smartphones and microwaves. Like, well, it's a little bit easier now.
I think if World War II was, hey, sit at home and play all the PlayStation games you've been neglecting for the past few years, I think the outcome would have been much, much different.
# greatest generation. Adam, you might notice that your mother has written in and is commenting on the stream saying, "Oh Lord, WTF, Adam." I think potentially referring to the pissy pants analogy made
that is comedy gold. And look, that isn't original either. That I have grabbed that off a meme, but you know, in all fairness, I think the analogy works.
I think it stands
pretty well. Yeah.
We've got a friend of the show, Matthew, writing in. Your point regarding truth in media also applies to sites with a .org host. Couldn't agree more. Anything that's like, you know, like foundation or organization, you just go, okay, well, you're not the CDC, so who are you? Why do you have a .org? And why do you think that you're trustworthy as a result?
How do we find .net? Is .net a trust?
.net's up there.
.net's up there with the...
Basically, when it comes to coronavirus stuff... Unless
Australia has a .net.
Unless the domain ends in .gov.au, you should probably think about it. At least check it against government sources, approved information, believability weighted people with medical degrees, people who, you know, are epidemiologists or have, you know, health journalists that have an understanding about how to read studies. Don't just like cherry pick a random bunch of randomized controlled trials that suit their particular point of view. Like,
if you're checking it against government sources, but this is all clearly a government conspiracy to get us to wear masks. The same government that is pushing for facial recognition wants us all to hide our faces, George. It's a conspiracy.
Yeah, how does that work? Yeah, if they were wanting the facial recognition, you certainly wouldn't want people wearing masks. That wouldn't help.
What's next? They're going to force us all to wear motorcycle helmets at the bank? Where does it end?
It's mind control, Tom. Anyway. Bill Gates is trying to institute mind control with the vaccines. This is obvious, clear.
With 5G.
With the 5G. Exactly. You know, I don't need to tell you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you don't need to tell me this. 5G is bloody, like, I don't know, making me sterile. What? Anyway, the actual news that we're linking into this is that masks are now mandatory, will be mandatory here in Victoria during lockdown 2.0.
Oh, did we not cover that?
Of this Wednesday. Well, I mentioned it briefly, but, you know, so that was announced today. So, it's kicking in on Wednesday. It's something like a $200 fine, I believe, if you're seen without one. Although I read the press release from the Victorian government, and it did mention some loopholes where I was like, no, don't give people those loopholes, because it was like,
you're going for a run, you just got to have it on you.
But they phrase it as like, you know, you have to have a facial covering unless, like, you know, child under 12, you can't for work or something. I didn't really elaborate. It was like, or in instances where it is not practical, such as going for a run. So I'm like, there's the language that people are going to twist. Or, you know, just like, why are you wearing a mask? Oh, I'm going for a jog, mate. Like that guy, I don't know if
you're in a wheelchair.
There was a guy in Mildura who was eventually like arrested and fined after being caught breaking social distancing rules like 7 times in one night.
Just a real close talker.
And every time they kept like finding him, like walking around drunk in the streets, being like, "Hey,
I love you, bro.
Why are you out here doing this?" And he's like, "I'm going for a run." I'm like, you're only allowed to be out for exercise or going to the supermarket. Where's the nearest supermarket to here? It's like, you're clearly breaking the rules. We've pulled you up like 6 times.
I did see.
It's Officer Me from earlier, so that's none of this works on me. It's multiple times.
I did see. We went for a walk earlier, and in the park, I shit you not, there was just like, you know, and virus numbers today were like 360 or something. So all these people just hadn't heard about the fact there's a virus going on. Bunch of probably about 4 or 5 family groups, so a mother and like say 3 kids. Times that by 4, so a big group of people just like hanging out within like a 5-meter radius of one another.
Just
basically
a real,
like it was a kid's birthday party.
A real Brady Bunch situation.
Yeah, and I was like,
kind of social distancing.
I know,
like, in a way, but
like they were outside, but like they were all way too close, and the kids were running around and touching each other and stuff. I was like, well, I know kids want to be kids. I get that. And I know you're outside, and I know, you know, the parents are standing 1.5 meters away from one another, but doesn't exactly send the right message.
Yeah, it's pretty nightmarish being a young kid, especially right now, because I guess you don't quite like how much you fully understand or anything like that. Like, did I tell you guys my nephew was told at school, like they explained to them a bit of what the coronavirus was. He's in he's 6, so he's like in grade 1 or something. Where they're like, So they were told what the coronavirus was, but then we said to him, it was like, oh, so what did they say? Like, what did you learn? He was like, that we have to keep back because it's very dangerous, and if we go near old people, they will die. It's like the wording. and I know, I've seen my nephew growing up being quite anxious at the best of times. I was afraid he would not want to go near my parents ever again. Like, I don't want to go near grandma and grandpa because I'll kill them.
like that's probably a good way to go about it, though.
Hey,
just scare the shit out of the kids and trauma them forever.
Just
accurate.
Your hands are kryptonite. Just don't touch it, Nan. Just stay away from Nan.
Yeah. Anyway, so hopefully we'll see more people wearing masks, and if we don't, I guess that's a lot of taxpayer dollars that we'll suddenly have.
State government bottom line's done very well out of the virus.
It's probably the only thing that's done well, to be honest. I remember tweeting sort of towards the start of July when we started having, additional case numbers sort of, popping up, sort of tweeting about it and being like, hey, given the increasing numbers, should we be talking about masks? Because everywhere else in the world is, and yet for some reason it's been not part of the health advice for up until now. To preserve PPE and other things for frontline health workers. But given the abundance of, cloth and cloth masks that you can make for yourselves, I don't know why that's been optional sort of up until this point.
It didn't have to be PPE masks. It didn't have to be hospital masks, a bandana at least or something. Something.
Just get the G-banger and put it on your head like they did in on Twitch. Not Twitch. What's it called? TikTok.
What?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
People literally got G-strings and other types of underwear, and they made masks out of.
Very effective.
Adam, I would remind you that your mother is listening.
Oh, is she though, George? She's probably given up by now. Let's be fair.
I mean, 31 years has probably done it for her. I do think, personally, that the idea of going out and walking in a park, by myself, when we've got, where we are, we've got a lot of area around us, and it's never crowded, sort of in the park. You got a lot of space. I do think that's probably excessive, but I'd rather stay on the side of caution. And it's hey, if we're out, it's also a cue. Aside from being established science that this will slow down the outbreak, and you shouldn't need to be told. It shouldn't need to be mandatory. We should just do it because it might hopefully benefit someone else. We should volunteer to do it just from being good people. But It's one of those things. I've sort of lost my train of thought there. Sorry.
Go hard or go home. Basically.
Well, that was going to be my point, in that I think people have more than proven so far that they can't do it as, they've done the common sense argument, right?
Yeah.
They've done the, hey, wear masks when you go into areas where other people are. So then you'd logically think, well, I'm by myself. The nearest person's 20 meters away. I'm probably okay.
I'd rather be overcautious.
People that inch, they took the stupid mile, and
it's something that Dan Andrews, our premier, mentioned in the press conference today, where he said, stop trying to look for loopholes. Stop trying to, the press is but what about if I'm standing on my left foot? And it's just stop trying to figure out ways to get around the rules. Just listen to the rules, and we won't have to mandate further fucking lockdowns. If everyone was doing what they were supposed to be doing up until this point, we wouldn't have to institute even the level of restrictions that we already have, let alone potentially considering stage 4 restrictions, an additional layer on what we've already got. Play by the rules in the first place, and we won't have to mandate and get more draconian. This is the only way we get out of this.
Yep, hard to tell Karen from Brighton what to do, George.
I can't. Karen from Brighton,
the Brighton lady.
Yes.
So amazing.
For those who aren't,
and that she got almost a specific mention from the Premier in his press conference, not indirectly, but damn, it was good. So basically, this is I don't know what news network it was, but a journalist was speaking to a woman about walking. Sort of trying to stay in your local area. And she's like, well, I've already walked all the streets of Brighton, so I need to see new things. Yeah, I've done all of Brighton.
To be fair, I haven't actually, we don't know what she was actually asked. So I feel like we've sort of blown this up, but her phrasing and the way she said it was not helping the cliche.
Unless the question was like, hey, could you say the dickiest thing that you could possibly imagine? And then she said,
we'll put the context to air as well as your answer.
I've got something that would fit perfectly for that question, unprompted. No, it's common sense, but people have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt here in Australia that common sense is uncommon. Whereas like in Holland, they're just like, yeah, it might help other people. Yeah, okay, let's put on some masks. Yeah, like and that's the end, and the end, and then things can go back to normal. But this dumb individualistic culture that we've got prevents anyone from doing anything for anyone else. It seems like it's frustrating.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, in the news, the world goes on.
Yeah, leaving coronavirus aside for a sec.
And this week, a momentous thing happened in Australia. History was revealed, shall we say, by the National Archives, and the palace letters were released.
That's the lead story that we're...
Yeah, well, I'm just going with that because I think it's kind of interesting.
It's super interesting.
It sounded more interesting, in fairness, before they were released.
I told you.
When they were released, it was like, oh, okay.
Adam wanted to talk about this on last week's show, and I was like, let's wait until the letters come out to see if there's anything interesting in them. And then turns out, not really.
Well, depends on who you talk to. It seems to be.
Kind of a bit. Like,
yeah. So the palace letters are basically private letters that the former Governor-General, Sir John Kerr, had between himself and the palace, mostly between the Queen's private secretary and him, Martin Charteris, about basically the goings-on in Australia, not just about the constitutional crisis, but other things like Cyclone Tracy and stuff around that time as well. So... what basically everyone was like, well, he's obviously communicating with the palace. We know he was doing that. The National Archives doesn't want to release them. Maybe they're trying to hide something. Maybe the palace had undue influence in the firing of Gough Whitlam. The answer to that is no.
Kind of.
No. No. And maybe a little bit no. But
the Queen wasn't directly involved, according to the letters, but... if you, as the Governor-General here... So basically the scandal was that Gough Whitlam was being refused supply. So they were democratically elected. Again, the Labor Party, after sort of, running into some sort of roadblocks, they're elected again. And then the Liberal government, or the Liberal Party rather, who had sort of the balance of power in the Senate, wasn't passing basic budgetary measures through, essentially shutting down the government. And what the Governor-General did is, because he's the Queen's representative here in Australia and we're still a monarchy to some degree, he was able to dissolve Parliament as a result, saying, you guys are completely deadlocked, even though it's only been a year, we're going to have a new set of elections. But I would argue that if the Governor-General is speaking directly with one of the Queen's reps, surely there's some degree of like sounding them out. Like he wouldn't have done it if the palace didn't have some kind of implicit, sort of like tick on that action, right? Like
Martin Charteris was it wasn't even the Queen, right? So he's dealing with the secretary, and
the Queen's secretary presumably has access to what the Queen's thinking is, right? Like
John Kerr was trying to sound out the palace to see what their opinion was, but their opinion basically was, you're a great bloke, you're doing a great job, we trust you to make the right decision. That was essentially the advice they gave. Sounds like he got the right train of thought.
Yeah, but then he only told them that he'd done it after he'd done it though, right? It wasn't like I'm gonna sack him. I have sacked him. I decided to sack him so as not to put the Queen in an awkward position, because presumably, like, he assumed Whitlam was going to then
fire him first,
Queen himself, and be like, "Hey, I think this Kerr guy's a bit shit. Can you get rid of Kerr?" And then the Queen has to decide whose side is she on, the Governor-General or the Prime Minister. So he's like, to avoid putting you in an awkward spot, I got rid of him without telling you.
So.
It does.
So depending on who you talk to, that may mean a number of things, right? And this is all new. This isn't new information either. We knew that was the case.
None of this really like sort of definitively answers any questions that people had about this, right? Like,
so basically, the conspiracy that people thought was going on wasn't really going on. But what it does mean is that is it important that, or does it matter that the Governor General fired the Prime Minister using his reserve powers? So, and then what does that mean? So some people have said, doesn't mean anything. It's no new information. Who cares? Other people have said, obviously a reason why we need to go to a republic. We have to fire off the republic cannon right now. Let's go full republic, because what's the point of even having the Queen if she's not going to do anything? I'm like, hang on. Wouldn't this... The fact of the matter is, the fate of the Australian Prime Minister was decided by an Australian in Australia. Isn't that proof that the system we have is working, sort of?
To some degree. I do think it is... To me, it is problematic that Gough Whitlam, who just prior to this, 12 months prior to the government being dissolved, had been re-elected. So they had an election.
By a slim margin.
Okay, but like either you're elected democratically or you're not, and he was in that instance. So he didn't even get to serve a full term previous to that. They called an early election, and then after that, less than 12 months after that, a party that wasn't elected is blocking supply in bad faith. It seems like you have a mandate to govern by the people and implement these policies, or you don't. And if it's a democratically elected government that you're kind of knifing, how is that democratic? Like it seems kind of coup-ish. And I understand that those are all within the powers of the Governor General, but like you clearly their own political dispositions as more conservative members of the community, like, can't be teased out from all of that sort of stuff. Like the fact that that there've been 20 years of Liberal government, preceding that, like the Labor Party hadn't been in power for some time, and then they're enacting these policies that they don't agree with, presumably, and then all of a sudden they get knifed. Like I find it hard to be able to pass that out.
I don't know. I mean, I think, listening to all the stuff that I've heard about it, I think the Governor General was acting on the legal advice he had at the time and acting within the Constitution of Australia.
The question being, that's the problem.
The question being is the Constitution good if it comes down to, because one of the motivation, the other way people have read this is, well, obviously the Governor General was just trying to save his own job. So is that really good? Does the Constitution work in that instance? If it becomes of like a who's going to stab each other first kind of thing? Because it becomes about self-preservation and not about the good of the public. But I think on the cusp of it, given the fact that they went to an election straight afterwards and the Liberals wiped the floor with Labor, I think it was probably the right decision given the time. But
but was that as a result of handling the crisis, or would that have just happened naturally at the end of their term?
But they were,
you know what I mean? Like, isn't that what democracy is? Is that you get to choose once every 3 years?
Yeah, but the point being
you
is
think these people should stay
how else
in
do you
power?
How else do you resolve the crisis?
I kind of think that the responsibility for the crisis lies on the leader of the Liberal Party, who was blocking supply and who directly benefited because he became the interim Prime Minister immediately afterwards. Like, they're literally incentivizing being a cynical bad actor who blocks supply. Like,
well, this is the same thing. The problem that's happening in the US as well, right? So this is the inherent problem with democracy, and to trust people to back down in good faith, I think, is a bit optimistic given recent history in both the US. UK
needs to be systematized. I agree. But the problem then is like, and this is the problem the Republic movement here in Australia has always sort of struggled with, is like, okay, if not a monarchy, then what kind of like republic? And turns out no one in the Republic movement can really sort of specifically agree on that, which has sort of plagued it for some years. And I think that's why last time we had a referendum, it was lost sort of 55 to 45, something along those lines. So, yeah.
And the other thing is, as well, is that going off your logic as well, in terms of, the history leading up to it and sort of whether or not people had a liberal bias, whether or not Kerr had a liberal bias. One of the conspiracy theories is that Fraser and the Governor General were in cahoots, right? And they sort of orchestrated this as an arrangement between themselves. I don't think based on the advice of my letters, because the letters, he's pretty honest, and he's very thorough and methodical in his thinking from what the National Archives were saying. I don't think this is the thinkings of a man who had a second agenda. I think it is someone who literally was trying to think through the pragmatic way of doing it, and that had the Queen's interest and the Constitution's interest at heart.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, it does raise the question of, what's the point of the monarchy in the long run? But I guess the Governor General, while they are the ultimate power, I guess, in Australia in that regard, they still are answerable to someone. And I guess the concept being is why it would be preferable to a president is because at the end of the day, the person in charge is still answerable to someone else. And then if that's the Queen or King, then they're only answerable to God, apparently. So, but then again, do you trust the King or Queen not to get all political and doing stuff as well? So
depends on the King or Queen.
It used to be the King or Queen was only answerable to God, but I guess now they're only answerable to God and whether or not there'll be an uprising to take their head.
Yeah,
a New Idea magazine
has shown,
and responsible to the guillotine as well. Friend of the show, Jody, is writing in, yes, but the Senate is also democratically elected, which is a good point. Like, that is true. Yeah. Obviously, they were democratically elected, but the problem is that the House is the governing. Like, if you have a plurality of members in the House, then you form the government. So it doesn't strike. Not that the Senate is supposed to be a house of review, right? The point is to, once the legislation comes through to the Senate, to refine it or to fix things up or to rebalance things, not to completely block supply, with the purpose of forcing a constitutional crisis to force out members of the opposite party because you feel as though you're doing better in the polls in this exact moment in time and could win an election. That's not the purpose of the Senate.
Recently with Turnbull and his what was the thing that he was it the neg? I can't remember now. What was the thing that they tried to force, or was it a double dissolution election where Turnbull got re-elected? I can't remember now.
Where he got re-elected.
I believe it was.
There was something where there was a. Oh, this is how fucking fast time goes. I can't remember.
Hang on. Do you mean when he got ousted?
No. So there was something they were trying to put through the Senate, and it kept getting knocked back, and they had the double dissolution trigger, and I think he eventually pulled it. And we've talked about this on the show, but it was obviously 3 years ago, and I can't remember now.
I don't have that information in front of me. Sorry.
Yeah, but anyway, the point being is that. I guess they'd already been to a double dissolution election, so it was kind of a weird territory to be in. But yeah, I mean...
Oh, yeah, here we go. Following the Senate's rejection of the building and construction industry bills on the 18th of April 2016, Prime Minister announced on 19th of April that he intended to advise the Governor-General to dissolve both houses of Parliament under Section 57, thus precipitating the first double dissolution in 29 years since...
Yeah.
87. Okay, cool.
Anyway... Yeah, that happened this week, and it was just a circle of hell, basically.
I started listening to a great podcast about this sort of era in history and sort of Gough Whitlam called The 11th, sort of referring to whenever it was the 11th of whenever that the double dissolution was actually called. Which is a great sort of, background on Gough Whitlam and the politics at the time and the sort of key movers in this whole... dissolving of Parliament and subsequent fallout and what happened there. So that's the 11th. It's an ABC podcast, which I would recommend listening to. Very well put together.
Well, speaking of circles of hell, Donald Trump did some shit this week. Actually last week, but we wanted to kind of you wanted to dedicate, a bit more sort of time to reading up on it and all that sort of stuff beforehand about what he did for his good friend Roger Stone.
So basically
friend.
I wanted to revisit the Get Me Roger Stone documentary, which is available on Netflix, 2017 film about Roger Stone and his influence on his background, his influence on the 2016 presidential campaign and things like that. To sort of give a bit of context to exactly why Roger Stone's sentence has been commuted by Donald Trump. And
that's the big thing he did last week. He commuted his sentence.
He did. So he was
convicted of was it fraud?
He was convicted on a bunch of different things: intimidating a witness, lying to Congress, a bunch of different stuff. But the sentence that was originally recommended, so it was found guilty. The sentence that was originally recommended was 7 to 9 years, and then Bill Barr's Justice Department kicked in the door and said, we're going to reduce it to, a number of months instead. Sort of deliberate, clear, obvious political tampering with judicial matters, which is, already questionable. But then Trump going so far as to actually commute his sentence to nothing. So Roger Stone was due to present himself to prison for this sentence that had been significantly reduced, and Donald Trump said, not only do you not have to do that, you don't have any sentence whatsoever.
He didn't serve any time at all.
No time whatsoever for convicted lying to Congress in relation to his contacts with WikiLeaks, which he has admitted to. There's amazing footage in the Get Me Roger Stone documentary where he goes, oh yeah, I had dealings with WikiLeaks, me and Julian Assange, passing that information, that hacked information from Russia through to Julian Assange was the allegation. He's like, yeah, we had heaps of contact. And then immediately smash cut after that to him denying that he's ever spoken to Julian Assange. He had no contact with him. It's really, really stark, the criminality and then the subsequent sort of cover up that's happened as a result of all of this. So what Roger Stone actually said in this New York Times article, he actually talks about how it would have been easier for him to have cooperated with... He said, it would have been easy for me to... quote, he knows I was under enormous pressure to turn on him, Mr. Stone told the journalist Howard Feynman on Friday, shortly before the announcement. Quote, it would have eased my situation considerably, but I didn't. So basically saying, they wanted me to roll on you, Donald, and I didn't, which does more or less imply that there was stuff to roll on him for. I know a lot about these crimes that we did together, so it'd be really good if you commuted my sentence so I don't have to tell him about it.
Squid Pro, no.
And Donald Trump, very shortly thereafter, commuted his sentence to nothing. So he's still convicted in the eyes of the law, convicted criminal Roger Stone, which feels really good to say. But he's basically paid no price whatsoever for it. There was something I learned rewatching this documentary that I saw several years ago that I'd forgotten about. It was that Roger Stone and Paul Manafort are basically best mates. I don't know that that's been publicly discussed a lot. Paul Manafort, obviously, he was convicted, on, was it money laundering charges? There was a bunch of shady money shit that he was doing. They used to own a lobbying firm together. Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, and some other guy were part of this lobbying firm that basically invented influence peddling. They worked on the Reagan campaign, and then when Reagan was elected into power, didn't take them along with them for whatever reason. And basically, so they set up this consultancy to sell time to the Reagan administration and reportedly represented, they called them the torture lobby because they represented all of these dictatorships from Angola and basically took money from them for access to the Reagan presidency. And I was just this guy is a supervillain or something.
The corruption is laughable.
It's talk about draining the swamp. These guys invented swamp.
Yeah.
These are the guys.
Mitt Romney is tweeting that this is all completely fucked up, shit's pretty fucked up.
Yeah, you've cooked it.
If Adam Schiff is complaining about the rule of law, that's any given Tuesday. But if Mitt Romney is talking about how you've basically corrupted democracy, that's you done fucked up.
Yeah, not only is Trump's action of commuting the sentence just this blatantly overt corruption where you're not even trying to hide skirt around it anymore. You can't even you can't give me an explanation for doing that even entertains the idea that this isn't woefully corrupt. Like, it's just overt at this point. But the other part I really like, because I haven't seen the whole documentary, but I've seen like bits of it. And the part that I really like, I can't remember who says it, but they just say, the only thing you need to know about Roger Stone is the tattoo of Nixon he has on his back. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. Like, really, that is all you need to know. Like, because that says so much.
Why would you get a tattoo of Nixon on your back? Like, why would you tattoo that?
His hero is...
He was involved.
Dodgy, tricky dicky.
I didn't even... so before Reagan, he was involved in Watergate. Like, Roger Stone was one of the people that was part of the Dirty Tricks campaign. And that's like Roger Stone and Dirty Tricks have since that day been like synonymous in terms of their, you know, their association in people's minds. Like he literally took a donation to... I forget. It was someone Nixon was running against. He was primarying... This guy was trying to out-primary Nixon, and Roger Stone took money to this guy's campaign effort and asked for a receipt to be written out to like the Socialist Alliance so they could turn around and use it basically as an attack ad against this guy, saying he's taking money from socialists. Like, you know, Nixon's a good guy in all of this. And like hiring someone to like infiltrate someone else's campaign, like all this sort of dodgy shit. This guy is like the Joker. Like, some men just want to see the world burn. Like, that is Roger Stone to a T. He wants to be seen as a supervillain.
Circle back to the tattoo thing. So you go to the tattoo parlor, you sit down, and you go, "What do you want?" Okay. Well, I want something. You know, why do you want this
strength,
tattoo?
Resilience. I want something that shows never giving up. And he goes, perfect. I've got my Richard Nixon book over here. I've got a few samples you could look through.
Yeah, it's just about something that was, you know, really meaningful for a period of time in my life. And I just thought it'd be great to get him emblazed on my skin for the rest of time.
Yeah.
Great idea. Solid idea.
I also really like when I first showed my partner a photo of him, and I was like, this guy's nuts. There was a picture of him, I think, appearing in front of the White House. So in his more like recent days as an older gentleman rather than his young days. But she looked at the picture and was like, he looks like he's just about to challenge you to a race around the world in an air balloon because he's in like top hat and steampunk goggles in like a tailcoat.
He literally looks like a Batman villain. Like it's that level. Like, he looks like the Penguin. He's gonna like open up his umbrella and fucking jet away. Like, that is the level of super villain.
What's his villain name? Like, if you got the Penguin, you know, the Riddler, the Joker.
It's got to be something to do with like the Dirty Trickster, or, you know, like
Trickster.
The Trickster. It's and you know, obviously the Get Me Roger Stone documentary sort of delves into all of his associations with, you know, noted conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, and like the way he met Donald Trump like in the late 80s was like through Roy Cohn, who was also like a notorious piece of shit. Like this like the supervillain big leagues this guy has fucking come from.
What I want to see though, because this is where, you know, we need the American people to come along with us on this journey, and people look for conspiracy theories, right? I mean, America's got a large population of people that love a good conspiracy theory.
Sure.
Here is
a lot of them were being addressed by Roger Stone's appearances on Alex Jones, if I'm not much mistaken.
Here is a real life conspiracy. It's not even a theory. It's real.
I was going to say,
an actual conspiracy.
It's an actual conspiracy. All of this stuff is documented. He's publicly said, yes, I had a lot to do with, you know, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. And then subsequently, like, that's footage. You could look at the footage. I've seen the documents. But like,
fill up your cup with this conspiracy and drink it. Do you know what I mean? Like, this, you should be outraged at this.
Yeah.
If you're an American.
Yeah. Where are the protests? This literally questions the rule of law. I think it was Adam Schiff said there are now two systems of government, one for Donald Trump and his mates, one for everyone else. And that could not be more accurate. Like, this, imagine this is what Trump looks like when he's trying to get reelected. Imagine what he looks like after he's been reelected to a second term and has no further possible accountability to his voters. Imagine what that hellscape looks like in American politics. Like, the stakes really for this election could not be higher.
Just put a golf course in the middle of Washington, D.C. I think that's probably the most logical thing.
I hope that's all he does. As long as he doesn't,
knock over the Washington Monument. We'll put a nice,
who knows?
the third hole, the green of the third, what do they call it? Tee. That can go there. I've just used all my golfing words. That's all of them.
Tee off from the Washington Monument. You clearly have never played golf. Like, that would be the worst spot to tee from.
Just tee off with my sand wedge. I don't know.
Or if you could from the Washington Monument. Isn't that across from the Lincoln Memorial?
Yeah, and then you put the green. The green can be the Lincoln
Monument.
Memorial.
See if you can get it between Lincoln's feet.
Yeah, it's like a mini golf course, right?
Yeah, like a really big mini golf course.
Yeah.
We'll call it a golf course.
A huge mini golf course.
A large mini golf course.
I didn't even talk about the sort of information about... So Stone sort of resigned from the Trump campaign at one point before the 2016 election. Or resigned or was kicked out. It's not exactly clear. I had a feeling he got kicked out. But
wait, he was too nuts for Trump?
Well, I think Trump just didn't like that he was getting so much limelight. Roger Stone loves being in front of the camera. Like, he describes himself in the documentary as an agent provocateur, someone who goads someone else into committing a crime, is what that means. That's how he describes himself. So he loves being in front of the camera. He loves the attention. He loves being known as a supervillain. At the end of the doco, he says, you wouldn't hate me if I wasn't so effective. Like, I love that you think I'm a supervillain, basically, because it means I'm good at my job. I'm like, fuck. But, so he gets kicked out of the Trump campaign. And then there was a minute where sort of Corey Lewandowski was in charge, and then Paul Manafort sort of comes to power, subsequently a few months thereafter. And sort of from the outside, you're looking at it, you're like, who's Paul Manafort? Who are these insiders? Why is this shift around sort of changing? And you realize, once you know their history together, that clearly Paul Manafort is a proxy for Roger Stone regaining his influence back on the campaign. Manafort says as much. He was one of 2 or 3 people that highly recommended me for the job. Meanwhile, Roger Stone is like an arm's length sort of... plausible deniability, but still acting on the Trump campaign's behalf. He's still a surrogate. He still goes on the news. He still does all these things on the Trump campaign's behalf to get him elected. He's just not an official spokesperson of the Trump campaign. So
it'd be interesting to see how
it's nuts. Like, seeing it all laid out.
You know what I mean? Like, how did they? I'm assuming people got paid, throughout all this. So, like, if you were to get their bank transactions and follow the money, like, how did this all work out? Like, if Roger Stone is still hanging around, was he receiving cash briefcases on the side? Or
we would know that if the prosecutor for the Southern District of New York, who was looking into Trump's inauguration fund, hadn't mysteriously pushed himself off a cliff and resigned in a hail of bullets like he did a couple of weeks ago. But unfortunately, we won't have that information until after the election now. So...
cross your fingers.
It's not a conspiracy theory
when we need it.
If it's an actual conspiracy.
It's just a conspiracy.
It's out in the open. Like, none of this stuff is like secret, conducted behind closed doors. It's all done in tweet storms and public firings. Like, it's all out in the open.
Maybe that's the reason why people aren't getting behind it, because there's not enough theory in the conspiracy. It's just
an actual conspiracy.
It doesn't seem like anyone's trying to hide it. So it's not sexy anymore.
No,
it's not a sexy conspiracy if it's so overt.
I think the guys on Pod Save America said it best. They're like, if you heard these were secret recordings, like the Nixon tapes, like, he would have already been impeached. Like, but because it's all done out in the open, there's this like plausible deniability around all of it. It's just this fire hose of information. Well, if he's doing it on Fox News, then I guess it's not illegal. But if we discovered it on a tape, like, it'd be like, aha, we got him.
I love the idea that something can be plausibly denied when it's just like so recorded and able to be proven.
Yeah, facts do not matter anymore.
Hey,
there's
that thing we did.
There's that thing that we did. So if this was a third world country, we'd be like, man, America should really get in there and install proper democracy. But I don't know what to do.
Sandwich.
Just shower the place with blue jeans and bikinis. I don't know what else to do, but it's America. They're already there. So It's concerning, and I
Send
hope
in the feds. That's what that's happening in Portland at the moment.
Yeah, well, yeah, they've already the feds. Not only have they been sent in, but they also refuse to leave.
Which is the
refuse to leave. And
which
also
is
kind
exactly
of
what democracies do.
Yeah, they also kind of refuse to acknowledge who and what they are. Which is a little terrifying. Like protesters just having unmarked cars pull up, open, grab people, and yank them in there, and everyone says, "Who are you?" And they just don't say anything and take people.
Yeah, like that time that happened in front of the Kremlin, where that opposition leader was assassinated. Yeah, it's exactly the same sort of stuff.
It's like it's a police force, but no one really knows about it. It's like a secret, if you will, like a secret police
Interesting.
turning up.
That's
literally
people.
Made a video game about this. It's called The Division.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, The Division 2.
In a virus afflicted America. Following a pandemic where a secret government organization shows up in New York and starts just killing people for the sake of democracy.
For democracy and prevention and all this sort of stuff.
Is this real life? It's really happening.
It is a little terrifying. Seeing secret police pinching people, but also when all your post-apocalyptic or alternate history video games are seeming quite plausible. It was really weird playing through the Last of Us Part 2 recently. Just it being 25 years post-pandemic United States. I'm like, oh boy. They're like, hey, how society crumbled? Oh dear. Oh god.
So what's happening in Portland? Portland, basically, there are federal agents that are moving around, sort of trying to disrupt, and they're arresting people, disrupt protests. And
we think they're federal agents. We don't really know who they are. They're just sort of in military fatigues with police badges on them. It's entirely meaningless in terms of what legal authority they actually belong to.
Yeah, what department what department of the justice system are they from?
Yeah. Are they park rangers? Are they animal control? Who the fuck are these guys?
Why are they arresting you?
Yeah. But the point being is that the local mayor has said, they're not us, we've asked them to leave, and they haven't. That's the key.
Yeah, kind of being like, hey, the government has, the Trump government has sent these people into Portland, and the mayor of Portland is saying, hey, leave.
Please?
Please? You'd think if, a higher up from local police, like FBI or whatever, are being sent into a city, you'd probably expect that the mayor of that city and their department is at least part of that conversation.
Or is involved.
They're not.
Yeah.
There's no, get out, please. I don't want your secret police here. So yeah, it's a little terrifying. And a similar sort of thing of if this was another country, if this was Iran, people would be like, we got to go in there and establish democracy.
As in the words of King George III from the musical Hamilton, I will send a fully armed battalion to remind you of my love.
So, I mean, I don't know whether this elucidates sort of who they are, but the Oregon Attorney General, Ellen Rosenblum, says she's going to file a lawsuit in the federal court against the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, the Marshals Service, Customs and Border Protection, and the Federal Protection Service, alleging these are the ones who have been violating civil rights. So
a bunch of huge federal law enforcement agencies that are completely unaccountable. That narrows it down. It's Homeland Security. Who's Homeland Security? Fucking everyone.
So, I mean, I don't know whether that's her having stabs in the dark of who it actually is, or whether they believe that these people are actually from these departments. The question is, who's leading it, right? Is it a coordinated effort, or are they literally 7 different camps set up around Oregon and Portland?
Well, in the case of Washington, D.C., they were apparently under the direct authority of Bill Barr, which, that's not how that works. This is not, they're their attorney general. So it's not, that's not how this works. The president is the, what's the phrase? The head of the military? The
Joint Commander-in-Chief.
Commander-in-Chief. But there is, or certainly there should be, in a democracy, which America keeps purporting to be, a distinction between civilian leadership of the military and civilian police forces and local enforcement of domestic policing issues. It is something that the founding fathers of America very explicitly wanted to avoid when they crafted the Constitution was to have military oversight on domestic grounds. That's something they weren't so thrilled about. They kind of had a revolution over it.
Do you remember, like, it'd be great to see, you know, obviously now that this has happened, it's out there in the news, all the militias that are there to protect
in case of government tyranny. This is what you are here for. Here's the well-armed militia. Here's your chance, guys, to restore democracy.
Those well-organized, well-armed militias with their bespoke assault rifles and beer cans and utility trucks. Where are they?
Where are they when you need them?
You find the beer cans, and then you'll find the militia. That's probably how that will work.
But I just want to see if that bazooka they bought for hunting is actually going to be used for the purpose of, the well-organized militia that apparently stops the King of England from bossing you around.
It's going well.
It's going great.
It's going great. Mm-hmm. So good.
Everything's great. Never mind all the bullshit that's happening here, but we probably don't have much time to go into it.
Bullshit being...
Oh, bullshit being, like, you know, there was the tower lockdowns that we had here. There's actually going to be, like, what's the term for it? Like
inquiry?
Is it a royal commission? No.
There was some sort of inquiry announced, yeah.
Yeah, like an inquiry into how that was handled, and I'll give them a head start, poorly, to put it mildly.
So does that constitute an official submission, Tom, or the forms need to be submitted in triplicate and there are no forms available? So
shit. But also, was it Clive Palmer has been charged with election fraud?
I mean,
I completely missed that.
Finances in the 2013 election, allegedly moving funds from his mining company to pay for political ads when that money was supposed to be set for something else.
That doesn't sound like Clive Palmer. Surely not.
Yeah, so all those big yellow billboards that we all made fun of might have been totes illegal.
Well, they were up really early, both elections. They were up really early.
Really long time.
Everywhere. So it's like he had to have pulled that money from somewhere. Do you know what I mean? Like, he didn't borrow it.
Yeah, and sadly, Roger Stone's political action committee wasn't returning his call, so I guess he had to find it somewhere else.
Yeah, in between rebuilding the Titanic and coming up with Jurassic Park 2, Electric Boogaloo, he found the money somewhere to do all that. So yeah, that's a thing that'll probably eventuate in nothing because, you know, who's going to send the billionaire to jail?
It's one of those things where it's like I saw like a passing headline about Clive Palmer, and I was just like, I can't today. I just can't. I'm sorry.
I've got a great story about that. I was checking the news, I was just reading ABC News or whatever on my computer, and my partner walked in and she said, "Oh, you're reading the news? No, oh God, everything's terrible. Like, it's all coronavirus, blah, 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 blah." And I was like, no, there's great news. And I found the first headline in like the breaking news that sounded like it was a good story. And I just started reading it, and it was a roller coaster of a headline because it went something like, footage of baby elephants having their spirits broken for tourism trade in Africa.
You got me.
Because I just saw footage of baby elephants. I'm like, how can that possibly be a bad story?
It's 2020. Everything's a bad story.
Look,
Tom,
I'm
you haven't
Google
learned.
Right now.
2020 is like an abusive relationship. Okay, it's just going to keep going. Huh?
Is this joke going to be in good taste?
No, I'm just saying, like, you keep thinking it's gonna be over at some point, and it'll just like resolve itself, and it's just
gaslighting us into.
Yeah, it's never gonna change. You need to leave 2020. 2020 will never improve.
Guys, I'm just going to go through. I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to go through Google right now, and I'm going to try and find a nice headline. You ready? So, global report: face masks to be mandatory as worldwide COVID-19. Okay, no, that's not good.
Thousands of
coronavirus. Australian biggest city to make masks.
US breaks record. 77,000 coronavirus infections in a day. That's not a good record.
Restaurant, Holy Duck, venues hit by coronavirus. No, okay. Killed up Commodore. No, okay. Multiple battlefronts as China takes on the world. No. JobKeeper expected to be extended beyond September for businesses that genuinely need it.
Genuinely being the operative word in that headline. So
that's let's put a pin in that.
A lot of space lives in that genuinely, in that sentence.
The only positive sort of news incident that I can think of in recent memory stems from a bad incident. Like, so a bad thing had to happen for this good chuckle-worthy thing to happen.
Okay.
Which I don't know if you guys heard about the 10-year-old boy and the great white shark off Tasmania that happened recently.
That was a good news story, I think.
I don't know. I'll take it.
It was a 10-year-old boy fishing with his dad. They were about 5 k's offshore, I think, in a boat fishing. And a shark, believed to be a great white shark, pulled him out of the boat. Like, it wasn't that he fell in the water and got attacked by a great white. The great white did the old up and yoink out of the boat.
Okay.
And his dad jumped in after him to save him when the shark let him go, and they got back in the boat and back to shore. The boy's alive. He's in a stable condition, all that sort of stuff. So great. No one died. Really traumatic, but crazy story. Right?
That is a fucking solid dad, by the way. Every Father's Day card basically writes itself. Hey, here's the 3-year anniversary since you fucking saved me from a great white shark. Love you, Dad.
Someone who was like treating the boy said that like the dad was amazingly calm. Like he was just like keeping it together. Maybe like the sheer amount of shock kind of
screams internally would have been in the Netflix caption below.
And as someone great white sharks are my favorite animal, but hearing that story, I was like, holy shit, that's terrifying. Anyway, the hilarious part is that when the ABC aired this story, you know how they have like, you've got the story going on and you've got like the lead lines and stuff where it'll say like, 10-year-old Tasmanian boy was pulled from boat by shark or whatever, or like rescued by dad in stable condition, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
The bit above it, which is usually like the 2-word kind of thing, was meant to say shark attack. And instead it said shart attack. and I was just thinking about it being like, if the boy had died and the tagline was like 10-year-old Tasmanian boy dies in
a shart attack,
and above it says shart attack. It was funny. Like, I'm glad everyone's alive, and that's a really scary and horrific thing to happen, particularly to a child. But whoever made that typo made my night last night, because I saw the picture and people were making fun of it, and I was just like, I really don't get it. It took me 30 seconds to notice it said shark instead of shark.
It was a long day for the editor. Didn't quite pick that one up.
Yeah. So yeah, there's still hope.
On that note, we have been, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all social medias that have, do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Selection. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Unnatural Show. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok at George Tibos.
He craves attention. You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
You can follow me to the pharmacy to get some masks.
And you can...
Don't do that. Then people will panic buy, and also crowds. Adam.
That's absolutely not what you should be doing.
Stop drawing crowds.
It's very hard, Tom. I'm a popular guy.
That's true. You're a handsome devil.
You can follow Adam on Instagram at ACDareen, and make sure you follow us all down to your local news station where we can discuss the latest shard attack in great detail.
With a mask on.
With a mask, most importantly.
Mask. Because then the shard won't get all over you. It'll just get over your
That's
hands.
The key. It's you have
remember, guys,
face
think
mask.
Of the P scenario. Think of the P scenario and the trousers, right?
Yeah. And then that way the shard stays in your pants. You don't get shard on anyone else's pants. It's a perfect analogy. I don't see anything wrong with it.
Yeah, remember the PP in your PPE.
Thanks for listening, guys. We love your faces. We'll see you next week. PP and PPE?
Yeah. The PP for PPE.